I've thrown a cup before and now my wheel is dirty, and when we start throwing we like to have a dry wheel. So what I'd start by doing is I'm just going to take a bit of the moisture away using the sponge from the outside, and then with the centre I'm going to use the flat edge of my wooden tool and I'm just going to take that away, and that actually leaves that centre part of the wheel dry. So that's a good way, nice quick way to make sure that it's nice and dry before you put your clay on. So this is a smallish kind of bowl. I'm using 800 grams. I have kneaded it into a cone and it's got the spiral on the bottom. So I'm going to get that into the middle of the wheel. Okay, so I'm going to just start again by getting a little bit of water going around the outside, and we want to apply some pressure from the top as well. So once you've had something on the wheel, you want to also make sure that you're applying pressure from the side and a bit of pressure on the top, just to get the clay wet up, but also to get it stuck onto the wheel. Otherwise, if you're just applying pressure from the side, it's going to shoot off the wheel. So we're going to start by doing some coning. So to do that, I'm going to use this part of the hand here, and that's pressing on that side, and you can see that's already bringing the clay up. And then I'm going to use this hand here to pull forward and draw that up into a cone shape. Now, whatever your fingers are doing is going to show on the clay. So if you're putting too much pressure, often people will really clench their hands and get quite a bit of pressure around this lower finger, and that will be reflected in the cone of the clay or whenever you're throwing anything. So if something's happening with your clay, have a little look and try and work out what part of the hand is applying that pressure. So we'll just do a little bit more coning. That's just kneading the clay, and then we're going to push that over to the side and start pushing that down. All right, so I'm going to do another cone, applying the pressure. This is also a good way to get any air bubbles out. If you do have air bubbles in your clay, they generally will come up and pop out the top, and then you can just take a little bit off the top. But because this clay was fresh from the bag, and I made sure that I didn't fold any air bubbles into it when I was getting it kneaded, there's not any air bubbles in this clay. So now I'm going to try and get this into a nice dome shape. So this part of the hand pushing forward, anchored here, little finger on the top because to create this part of the curve, and applying a bit of pressure. Watch your little finger, make sure your little finger's not applying harsh pressure and creating a little indent down here. And now we've got a nice cone shape happening, and it's not off centre. All right, so just like when we started doing a cup, when we do a bowl, we're going to follow the same techniques. However, we don't want the bowl flat like the cup. We want the bowl in a nice continuous curve for this particular bowl. So when we put our thumbs in and open it up, we're not going to open it up flat across the bottom of the wheel. We're going to let our thumbs taper up the side of the opening. So I'm going to start by making a little well. I'm anchored on one side, extra water, down a little lower, and just start to open it up a little bit by applying pressure to one thumb only, so as not to put two pressures onto the piece. A little bit more water, and go down a little bit more, and opening that up. Okay, so I'll just take the excess moisture out. So now we're back to this position here where this arm is anchored and this hand is resting on that hand, because that will anchor this hand if it's anchored on this hand, which is anchored. Anchor, anchor, anchor. A little bit more water. Start working the base shape. So we never move on until the base is how we want it. So now I might just check the thickness of this part here. So putting the needle tool in, the finger touching the top of the pot. Okay, so we've got about 12 mils here. I reckon we could go a little bit, another 2 mils. So I'll put a little bit more water. And I'll start by closing up that little hole that I've just put in the middle. So I'll run down towards the centre from the outside just to close that up. And now I'm just going to do another pull towards me, but coming up on the side. Now I can feel a little air bubble. So I'd have a little, if you do ever feel a little air bubble, just have a feel to where it is. There it is. And we get our needle tool, we pop out, we put it into the hole, into where the air was. A little bit of water on that, little rub around, and then hopefully that will get it out. You might have to redo that. So I'm going to just work now using the hands at 3 o'clock. I'm going to continue to work that base. So we're just getting it into a nice curve. So you can use your fingers to do this, or you can come back and use a tool. So a tool that you might use might be something like a wooden round kidney, and you could use that just to help get it into a nice curve. Now you can see there is that little air bubble still there, persistent. A little bit more water. Rub over it. I'll try it one more time. Okay. Now, I'm going to start, now we've got the base how we want it, I can start pulling up the side. So what we've got to remember is we are throwing the inside shape. Now, the outside shape here, we're going to have a bit of support down here. So we don't want the outside to look like this, or it's wet clay. It's going to wobble and it's going to become all off centre and probably collapse. So we need to leave a little bit of clay here on the outside to provide some support. And then after it's reached leather hard, we can turn that off and shape that to follow the shape of the inside of the bowl. So that's why we're concentrating on the inside of the bowl. So I'll get a little bit of water again on the side. So 3rd and 4th fingers, thumbs crossed, anchored, working at 3 o'clock, applying equal pressure to the fingers, coming up the side of the bowl, and very gently off the rim. If you move too fast off the rim, it's going to get knocked out and it puts the bowl off centre. So let's try again. 3rd and the 4th, coming up the side of the bowl, nice and gentle off the top. So we've got a nice little continuous curve coming up the inside now. It's about 5 mils thick, so it's not a bad thickness. You can sometimes, if you want it to look finer than what you've thrown it, then you can have a play with the rim. So we might just, if I apply a little bit more pressure to the rim and make that a little thinner, that will give the illusion that it's a finer bowl, but you're not compromising the strength of the bowl. So I've got a nice thinner rim, or if you want it to be more chunky, then you can chunk up that rim, and it changes the whole look of the bowl, whether it's more refined or more chunky home style. So I might just refine that off a little bit. And then just like we did with the other rims, we're going to use our chamois. We're going to curve it, fingers either side. Let the chamois provide the pressure. It's very light pressure. That's going to take off any little scrappy bits and give a nice curve. All right, so we've got this continuous curve happening. So you can do variations on that. You could, make it more curved, or it might be a taller bowl. If you wanted a wider bowl, you'd make a wider dome to start with. So the size of the dome is really going to determine the width of your bowl. Because if you've got a small dome, you can only make your base so wide. Whereas if you've got a wider dome, you can really scoop that base out, and then you're getting quite a wide bowl. So I'm just going to apply a little bit more pressure on the inside and scoop out that middle just a little bit more. It's very light pressure, and then from there it's just a little sponge to get any of the little scrappy bits out. Could just do and don't worry about the outside too much, because that we're going to turn, as long as the inside is looking good. So from there, we've done our rim. So now we're going to clean around the wheel. So using this flat section of your tool, holding your tool at an angle towards you, you can start to take away a little bit of this clay. Always use 2 hands on your tool. So I've got this little funny bit that's stuck up on the bowl, so I can come in like a pencil and just knock that down onto the wheel head, and then again scoop that away. So you might have to do that a few times until you get used to it. And then we have our bowl, so we're going to come back to putting a little bit of water at the back, grabbing our wire, using our fingers across the top of the wheel head, dragging that water underneath the base, and then pushing from the base of that bowl, slide it off onto our hands, and then it's going to pop onto that newspaper. Fantastic, and that's how you throw a bowl.